I got a story for you. In 2015, I was out in the woods. I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. Stay tuned.
Can I get a hooah?
So there was 2015, Manassas, Virginia. I had just sold my house, and I had been living in an apartment, and it was winter time. Coming into winter, it was cold. It had not yet snowed. Now, I have another video on this channel where I have a camping trip where you see me go out in the snow and I build a fire and I cook a little bit. That's a separate video. But right around that same time, on a day that when there was no snow, I went out to this huge area of woods that was behind the complex where I was living. And I just took a bag with me and some food, a little bit of whiskey to go sip because I was missing home. I was missing the woods. I wanted to get out of the house because when you're up in Northern Virginia in the Beltway, you work, you're constantly commuting, you're inside buildings all the time. You get that hunger to be in nature. So there I was one weekend, and I just had this yearning to get outside, to get into the outdoors. So I packed my gear, and I walked out on a Friday night in the evening after work to the woods. I walked through down a road, and then I got onto a trail, and I found a creepy old abandoned house that had not lived there for years, and there was still like clothing and shoes and household goods strewn about all over the floor in the front yard. I guess maybe homeless people had lived there before or taken over the place, but it was really super creepy. It was like the Blair Witch. You walk in there with a flashlight. There's no power, obviously, so you got a flashlight and you're looking around. You're just waiting to see a dead body somewhere. It was super scary. Anyway, I got out of there and I continued walking down further trails. And I got way out in the woods, like where I am now. There's nobody around. Gathered some wood, made myself a nice fire, burned down the fire, took coals, and I started cooking. And I was listening to some music, like I think it was like the soundtrack from Lord of the Rings and some stuff like that, with the Scottish or the Irish kind of folklore Gaelic music. Just nice ambiance to go with the fire. Anyway, cooked my meal, had a couple of sips of whiskey, enjoyed myself, but I wasn't going to stay the night. So I had packed up my gear and I had started walking out, and by this point it was pitch black. And when you make a fire, you can't see anything. You get kind of blinded. You get that night blindness when you get flashed with something bright, a flashlight or fire or whatever. So it was taking a little while for my eyesight to adjust to the dark, but I had already crunched out through the leaves, and I got back to a trail, and I was working my way back towards civilization when I got a creepy feeling that I was being watched. So I sat down, and I had borrowed from my work some thermal optics. They were not mine, they were from my work. So those are the ones that when you look through them in the dark, you can see it's black and white, and you can see hot or cold. You can flip the switch, or you can switch it to like a predator view where you can see colorizations or whatever. But I looked, and I could see like little mice in the woods. I could see, rabbits or raccoons or little critters. I could see some birds up in the trees just sitting there, because it was already about, 8, 9. No, it's later than that. It was about 9 or 10. Anyway, so I started looking around with this thermal scope, and all of a sudden, right in the direction and the location where I was, probably 200 meters back, I could see a person, because I had it on black hot at the time. I saw a person walk out of the woods and onto the trail, right exactly where I had been. And I got goosebumps. I was like, holy crap, somebody was in there the whole time, and they must have been watching me. And I had been in there a good 2 or 3 hours, cooking and drinking and whatever, just relaxing by myself. So I immediately thought, oh my God, what if this guy's following me? What if he wants to rob me or whatever? I was not armed. And I saw him, and he was coming straight at me. Now, it was pitch black. He couldn't see me, but I could see him. So I said, you know what? I'm going to wait and see if I can see who this is. So I walked into the woods about 15, 20 yards, and then I laid down like I'm doing now behind some bushes, and I just watched him with this thermal scope. And I was just looking at him come down the road, and he was walking toward me. And it took him probably a good 5-10 minutes to get to where I was at. He came by, and I couldn't see any details, but I could tell it was a man. He came out, walked toward me. He walked right in front of me, and my heart was pounding out of my chest because I don't know who this guy is. Is he a killer? Does he have a gun? Does he want to rob me? Is he a homeless person? Is he crazy? I don't know who this guy was. And he just came by. He was just walking slow, and I watched him, and I watched him, and I watched him. And then he left, and he disappeared down into some woods, kept going. And I was thinking to myself, who the hell was that? Because I was in the middle of nowhere on a Friday night in the woods, and there was no reason for anybody to be in those woods. The only thing I could think of was that he was just watching me. Maybe he saw my campfire from a distance and was curious, and he came out there, and he'd probably been there for a while. But talk about creepy. When you've got a fire going and it's crackling and making noise, or you can't hear necessarily noise that's going on around you when you got a roaring fire. And then I also had been listening to the music, so I couldn't have heard if somebody had walked up on me or not at night. So it was kind of like, it was scary. It was also a learning experience because you need to pay attention to where you are, especially if you're not on your own home turf, and there could be other people out there. And it wasn't anybody from that homeless building because I had looked in that whole place. It didn't look like anybody had lived there recently. But there was somebody in those damn woods, and I was not alone. So if you're in the city and you go out to, the outskirts and you're by yourself, pay attention to where you are. Because you never know when somebody's out there in the woods with you. Be careful out there. If you have any stories that you'd like me to relate, send me an email at storytipline@gmail.com. Storytipline@gmail.com. And I encourage you guys to please subscribe, because the way that YouTube is working now, you cannot monetize at all unless you have a certain amount of subscribers, one. And two, a lot of people will watch your videos, but then they navigate away and they don't necessarily subscribe. That's what the content developers really need you guys is to subscribe. And I know you get tired of hearing everybody ask, but it's for a reason. So if you really like the content and you're learning something or you're enjoying it, please subscribe. I appreciate it, and I don't take you guys for granted. You all be safe out there. Have fun in the woods. Watch your back. Always be prepared and let somebody know where you're going. This is the Camera Commando, out.
Charlie, don't surf! On the way up PPRs with dealer 5-5.